Larry was a quiet guy.
The dude couldn't jump, wasn't fast, wasn't athletic.
But Larry Bird would put fear in everyone else.
And here comes Larry Bird. It's good! It's good!
I wasn't going to let an injury stop me from diving on the floor.
Never seen a final game with two greater individual players.
Watching what greatness is all about.
Larry Bird, nice feed behind the back to Buck.
He says, you guys are being disrespectful to me. You guys are putting a white guy on me.
It always seems like I get the last word.
Playing against him, you're looking into the eyes of an assassin.
1969, a summer day in Hobart, Indiana, as the unassuming Larry Bird visited his aunt's house 4 hours north of his hometown, where he was invited to play basketball with his neighbours. He would then sink his first shot, and then on, he was hooked. A basketball journey had begun. Soon, the 6'1" freshman had quickly blossomed to a 6'7" senior as the Black Hawk center, but with a God-given versatility to play all 5 positions on the court, where he was already content to stretch outside the paint when needed, well before it was considered to be efficient. Combined with the clutch gene that prospered before it even got to college, well, everyone wanted to be like Larry. But the IU commit had only gotten started. He moved back to the forward position in a bid to best utilise his all-round talent in college, and Bird, like no other, carried a previously pitiful Indiana State franchise forward. So come the summer of 1978, the Celtics took a gamble drafting Bird in the 1978 draft, knowing they'd be without their man for another year while he opted in for a final year of college. As the Celtics drooled at the thought of an NBA-bound Larry Bird, his legend would grow ever greater with every game at the collegiate level, as basketball's finest talent. Captified by his excellence, Bird led IU to an undefeated season in 78-79, but many still questioned this Bird. He'd never been on national TV, didn't talk to the media, and just wanted to be left alone. So how great really was he? Well, a damning NCAA tournament run proved to the world Bird could talk too, leading Indiana State to a national championship game, where the Magic met the Bird. Two of different colour, backgrounds, and contrasting styles both on and off the court. Bird, the silent character off the court, but dominated with his versatility and power on it. Versus Magic, the charismatic, elegant showman oozing with finesse. But both, undoubtedly, the two best at the collegiate level, stacked against each other for what would not be the first time in their careers, as everyone around the world tuned in to the biggest college game of all time, as Bird and Magic tipped off, but the stifling Spartans' defense stumped Birds in his track, keeping him from finding his usual rhythm.
Anytime Larry Bird touches it, there's about 3 people in his area.
Ultimately, it was Magic's night, not Bird's. But the 6'9" forward had left an undeniable mark on college sport, with career averages of 30, 13, and 5. So by the time he was ready to don the green and white, he wasn't just a highly touted prospect, he was a fully formed superstar, poised to change the NBA landscape, specifically for a franchise dire for their next leader.
Multi-million-dollar contract with the Green, making him the richest rookie in the history of pro sports.
Bird had been a symbol of hope over the last year for a stumbling Celtics squad, touted to make an instant impact.
The guy can do the shooting, play the defense, and above all, he's a passer. I tell you, it might take a little time to get it gelling, but we're on our way.
Bird began to become aware of his ability on the court. His confidence only grew as he hit the majors. He thought he could do anything, where even the big bodies of the pros seemed just as slow and small as at the collegiate level. He intertwined two differing personas perfectly for an edge on the court, the loud trash talkers and the quiet reserved players. He was attracted to both styles, and this unique combination made him better than anyone ever could have imagined. In improvement that leapfrogged a 29-win Celtic squad the previous year to 61 wins on the season, through Larry's immediate rise to domination as a youngster, the type of generational talent that rubs off onto his own players, with an irate ability to make his teammates better, as he edged out Magic Johnson for Rookie of the Year. It was an NBA corporation in dire need of rivalries as attendance was rapidly falling. But Magic and Bird reversed what had become a downwards linear trend in only their rookie seasons, bringing newfound excitement to the NBA. Once again, fans were excited for an NBA postseason, Bird's Celtics treaded water, sweeping the Rockets in the first round. Yet in spite of all the believers that spurred out of nowhere, the younger Celtics squad couldn't stand with the older Philly unit. Having lost Game 1 at home, they never recovered in a 5-game loss. A sour end to a super debut, as many felt Bird had been handed too heavy a burden when things went south for the Celts. But more importantly, Bird's willingness to accept the burden and excel as a 23-year-old had signaled the beginning of a new era of Boston basketball. So the Celtics retooled in the offseason, trading away picks 1 and 13 for Robert Parrish and pick number 3, which they'd utilised to take Kevin McHale. Him and Parrish both deemed to be integral pillars of the future with Larry. So with Bird at the helm in year 2, the Celtics outpaced the East champ Sixers for a division title and 62 wins, where in a tight MVP race he was edged out by Julius Erving. But for Bird, the glory and awards of the NBA meant little to him. He just wanted to play ball. The great white hope, to many, felt like another basketball player on this team. So with a week's rest going into the 1981 playoffs, the Celtics made small work of the Bulls in 4 games. But again, 9 days rest awaited them in a rematch with the Sixers. So the Sixers, coming fresh off a Game 7 victory, drained 2 free throws for the win against the previously couch-bound Celtics. Despite evening it up in Game 2, the 76ers took firm control at home, and as Bird couldn't put the ball in the basket, the team didn't know what to do, forcing shots and forgetting the principles of inside basketball. But win or go home in Game 5, Bird excelled. He orchestrated a double-digit comeback, both facilitating and scoring, and his vital putback got the game within 1 with 47 seconds left, before Carr knocked down the winning free throws. But again, in another battling Game 6, Bird nailed a dagger with a minute left.
On a defensive switch, Hollins on Bird. Larry Bird shot. Look at that shot.
To send it back to Boston for a Game 7.
And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Bedlam in Boston Garden. Only 3 teams in the history of the league have come from a 3-1 deficit to win.
Many believed the 2 teams present were the league's best, in a Game 7 believed to be a championship bout, a game with unparalleled intensity. But for the 5th game running, Boston found themselves down at half, and with 4.5 minutes to go in the final quarter, down by 6, the pressure fell on Bird to deliver.
Larry Bird, and it's all going to be on his shoulders. It's a team game, but you look for your leader. You look for your top player.
Straight after, he stole the ball of Julius Erving,
Intercepted by Bird. That's greatness.
with a beautiful outlet pass to get Tiny Archibald to the line, and that's all he needed to get back in the game. He got another steal the next time down the floor for the Sixers and tied the game with 2 clutch free throws, and on the fast break he was unforgiving,
Larry Bird pulls up, and the Celtics lead.
finally giving the Celtics the lead. And as the buzzer sounded, a new page in Bird's already filled story turned, as fans stormed the court in triumph, and in the midst of it all, the great white hope. So entering the 1981 finals, many favoured the hot Boston Celtics. But after splitting the homestand, a crucial trip to Houston went begging for Bird, going for back-to-back 8-point games to again split the road trip. The series now at 2-2, everyone wondering what was the matter with Bird. Coach Finch outlined Bird's ability to win them games of basketball without shooting well, through his rebounding, playmaking and defense. But regardless, Bird still needed to score for a chance to beat the West's best team. But thankfully, Cedric Maxwell picked up the slack in the crucial Game 5 as the Celtics took the series lead. Bird would go on to end the season on a positive note, with 24 points leading into the final minutes. And in times where Bird launched less than a 3 a game, he still maintained confidence up by 3 in the NBA Finals.
In the corner, Bird. Quick! A 3-point field goal! A 3-point field goal for Larry Bird!
He drained a season-ending bucket on only his 8th 3-point attempt of the playoffs, as the Celtics returned to glory with ring number 14 through the all-round play of Larry, but more specifically, the scoring juice of Finals MVP Cedric Maxwell. Together, they cemented Boston's place back atop the NBA world. Bird and the Celtics thus felt unstoppable going into the 1981-82 season, believing they had a dynasty brewing with little reason not to go back-to-back. But for any team, a 37-15 start is amazing, but for expectations of 60+ wins, the Celtics were suffering from some mild championship hangover. But inconspicuously, against the Jazz in mid-February, it kick-started a series of wins. However, when Bird went down with a fractured cheekbone, the win streak was in doubt as he'd miss his first professional games in 2.5 years. But the complete Celtics roster kept them afloat, extending the streak to 9 in his short absence. A roster so sound that upon his return, Bird eased his way onto the court as a 6-man. Even when the win streak peaked at 18 wins and Bird was fully healthy, he continued to come off the bench, which was fine with him, a testament to his true desires to win. But eventually he returned to the starting lineup before a matchup with the tough Bullets team, where the Celtics' superiority and talent had been overcome to a surprising degree by Washington's postseason intensity, having split games 1 and 2. Bird's inconsistency was telling. One game timid, the next supernatural. But the championship grit of the Celtics prevailed in games 4 and 5, surviving back-to-back overtimes to advance to the second round. A wake-up call for the defending champs, where unsurprisingly it was Philly awaiting in the conference finals, and coming off a series win last season and a 40-point win in game 1, Bird and the Celtics got cocky and consequently complacent, as they lost the next 3 games of the series in which Bird failed to score over 20 points in either of them. The loss of Tiny Archibald in game 3 proving to be critical. Just like that, the Celtics were down 3-1 for the second year running to Philly. The word world champion now had a hollow meaning. And for the first time in a while, it felt like Bird was on the hot seat. Sure, he was doing the other things.
Larry Bird on the bench, he has scored 8 points, but he has been by far the best rebounder in this series. And also, perhaps the leading playmaker on the Celtics, leading in steals too.
But Boston needed a go-to scorer. They were hoping for a repeat of 81, and things looked promising again as Bird reminded the audience of his play with 20, 20 and 8 as he rallied game 5 and 6 to even up the series. The biggest rivalry in the NBA again for a game 7. The world had Boston winning at home with the momentum of humiliating Philly in back-to-back games. But like they'd done at the start of the series, in box position to win, they choked. As Julius Erving hit jumper after jumper, all they could do was watch, falling to their inevitable foil once again. Boston's biggest problem was not what they had or didn't have, it was who had arrived in Philadelphia the next year. Philadelphia had acquired league MVP Moses Malone, so it felt like a season of chasing the league's best. The team still wound up with 56 wins, but not quite their dominant best. Although Bird individually had established himself as a mainstay on the NBA first team and all defensive teams. However, having not won the division this time round, they had to play Atlanta in a best-of-3 series that took them all of 3 games to get it done. So when a hungry Bucks team awaited, it was bad news for Boston. Milwaukee were the team always on the outside of the Celtics, 76ers, Lakers love triangle that ruled the NBA in this era, and Milwaukee wanted to belong. So after an embarrassing 21-point loss at home for Boston in Game 1, warning signs of carelessness and dissent emerged. And as Larry Bird was forced to miss Game 2 with the flu, the Celtics expectedly went down 2-0 going to Milwaukee.
They're booing at the Garden.
And by the time the team came out for warm-ups in Game 3, they'd already lost the series, crumbling in 4 games to the Bucks. A gut-wrenching exit for a Celtics squad with so much promise, described by Bird as the toughest loss in the franchise's storied history. The Celtics thus went into the offseason knowing there was work to be done. The front office deciding a coaching change was necessary, where Bill Fitch, architect of the 1981 championship, was moved out and K.C. Jones was brought in. Coupled with it, Boston, who had been soft defensively at the guard position, shored it up by acquiring Dennis Johnson from the Phoenix Suns. And Bird, who punished himself in the offseason for the embarrassing exit, made a vow to work harder than he ever had, returning with renewed determination for the 1983-84 season, one that would prove much brighter. And already before the season's opening, the Celtics got into a brawl with the Sixers in pre-season, a juxtaposition of their pathetic, careless demise only 5 months ago in the playoffs. In spite of it, a slowish start to the year was then later dismissed by Larry Bird's finest stretch of basketball, where he consistently averaged 24, 10 and 6 as the most complete player in the game. So unlike last year, the Celtics rode the momentum of a 10-1 end to the regular season into the playoffs as a 62-win roster. But like 2 years prior, the Bullets were no cakewalk, where 4 close games to start the series thankfully went the way of the Bird, claiming a 3-1 series win. And now the fun of the playoffs begun in the second round against the Knicks. Led by Bernard King, both teams had their outright superstars, drawing them level across 4 games, and constant across all was Bird's elite play. But in Game 6, his 35 points were overshadowed by a game-tying shot, along with Parrish's missed tip-in, leaving them facing yet another Game 7. With everything on the line, Bird answered the call. He pulled up with irrational confidence, dumping it off in the paint with ease for a 39-point triple-double in a game the Celtics had no excuse to lose. But after a grueling series, the Celtics got a break. Back in the first round, shockwaves had permeated through the NBA when the Sixers, as the second best team in the East, got upset by the Nets, who then lost to the Bucks. Respectfully though, the Bucks were no 76ers with Dr. J and Malone. This was a bracket break for the Celtics, where the circumstances of last year had turned around a great deal as they avenged last year's sweep in 5 games. Each year, the new schedule would come out. Celtic players and Laker fans would circle their respective games against each other, but regular season games held little weight come playoff time. The rivalry between Bird and Magic was somewhat obscured by the fact that there was already a long-standing Boston-LA rivalry, and there were other marquee players on the floor. But now, Bird had become Boston's cornerstone, and Magic was starting to take the torch from Kareem. So it wasn't till the '84 playoffs, Bird and Magic's 5th season in the league, that the Celtic-Laker Magic-Bird rivalry returned to the ultimate venue, the NBA Finals.
Now in each of the last 4 NBA World Championship Series, either Magic or Bird has competed. But this is the first time that the two have gone head-to-head for the title. It's a matchup that everyone has waited for.
The Celtics, well rested, didn't look ready, going down 18 points in the first quarter of Game 1, a deficit they could never overcome, losing the first at home. Quickly, Game 2 had become close to a must-win, and with the Lakers up by 2 in the second game, it seemed like they had it in hand, and more broadly, the championship in the balance, as the Celtics, about to foul, got gifted a bucket from James Worthy to tie it up, and Magic uncharacteristically dribbled out the clock in a brain-dead failure. Momentum on their side, the Garden shaking, the Celtics held on in overtime to even up the series going back to LA. But the better team flexed their muscle in Game 3. At the Forum, the Lakers destroyed the Celtics. Magic racked up 21 assists, setting off an explosion in Bird's head. We played like sissies, and asked what was needed to change things, Bird said 12 heart transplants. It was planted in the mind of the Celtics, the realization of just how special this Laker team is. And to beat them, they'd have to out-effort their opponent. So as Mikhail clotheslined Rambis early in Game 4, it seemed to ignite the Celtics, a signal of the energy required to topple the overpowering Laker force.
The team that gets blown out, they get very, very angry. And the Celtics locked the locker room door, kept everybody out, and made the entire world an enemy. And they came out smoking for this one.
As Bird completed open heart surgery on the Lakers, trailing by 5 with less than a minute to go in regulation, Bird hit 2 clutch free throws to tie it up and send it to overtime, aided by his rival Magic's miscues again. And with Kareem fouled out, the Celtics looked to take firm control in overtime. Down by 2, with a minute 30 left, Bird calmly got to the rim for an easy bucket. And as his foe missed 2 free throws, the game remained tied with 30 seconds left. It felt like a door opened for Bird to reclaim his throne with Magic on him.
All over him. He can't do a thing. Bird, turnaround, hits.
Critics argued the Celtics had been outplayed every game, winning solely through Laker failures down the stretch. But either way, they went back home with the series now in the balance. But a trip home that was unexpectedly jeweled at 97 degrees heat in the Garden. But the country kid from French Lick, Indiana, thought the conditions were ideal. What's the fuss? As he didn't break a sweat for his 34-point night. But the Celtics had to go back to LA, where Byron Scott's takeover propelled a Laker comeback, then turned comfortable win, eerily similar to the pressures of the 1979 National Championship. Game 7 awaited, this time on Bird's home floor. So the Celtics, fueled by a prosperous crowd, took control and never wavered. It got as close as 3 points with a minute left as Bird clanked a midi off rim, but a magic turnover, like he'd done all series in the clutch, effectively wrapped it up for the Celtics.
Cooper goes for three. It's over. The Boston Celtics are the NBA World Champions.
Bird had done it. He won it for Terre Haute.
I won this one for Terre Haute.
Because in their eyes at least, he'd finally beaten Magic Johnson. His off-season was made ever sweeter with the return of the MVP to Boston, making him the second center to win the award in 20 years, paving a way for a new generation of do-it-all forwards. And as great squads do, Bird's Celtics got off to a 15-1 start in the 84-85 season, leading into a 63-win season, as the best team in the nation with again the MVP of the league. His greatness encapsulated no more than a game winner on the 27th of January 1985, and 2 nights later,
The Bird, Larry, a runner. Got it! Ball game's over. Boston wins.
or was it the 60-point night of nothing but net, embodying the very essence of scoring?
When a guy is literally coming up the court, calling his shots, he literally said, off the glass into the trainer.
He had the other team celebrating on a bucket that didn't even count. On the year that his 3-point percentage incredibly jumped almost 20% from the previous year to 43%. So on a roll come playoff time, they won out 2 close games against the Cavs before Bird had to sit out with an elbow injury in a Game 3 loss. As the Cavalier Stadium filled with chants of "We want Bird," Bird coldly responded, "They want me, I'm gonna throw both barrels at them," adding fuel to a fiery Cav crowd, a decision deemed to be a huge error. But Larry came out early for warm-ups in Game 4. He waved to the crowd. He took a lap around the floor and got stuck into business, backing up his talk with a tough performance for a 34-point, 14-rebound and 7-assist game and 2 game-winning free throws to send a now distraught Cavs team home. He was built for the occasion, thriving on the challenge. But unfortunately, it looked to be another tough series against a climbing Pistons team, having split the first 4 games, before the Celtics closed out the series with back-to-back wins. And a quadrilogy against the Sixers was now insignificant. Philly no longer on par with the Celtics, dismantling them comfortably in 5 games. The Celtics rightfully back in the finals in a colossal rematch against the Lakers, who cruised back to the finals, ringing up an 11-2 record in the West playoffs thus far. Could the Lakers forget 1984, and could the Celtics stop the electrifying and famous running game of the Lakers? But in Game 1, it was a continued beatdown. The Lakers were cursed at this point, as the green and white battered them for a 34-point Memorial Day massacre, rinsing any shade of invincibility of a prideful Lakers squad.
They call this one of the greatest rivalries in all of sport, the Celtics, the Lakers. And if that is true, it is the most one-sided rivalry in all of sports.
So in a bid to shift the tempo of the series, in Game 2, the Lakers ran out to a 21-8 lead before the Celtics' Bird and McHale had even scored.
But you can see the aggressiveness of the Lakers. Bullet pass, Magic to James Worthy. Win or lose, Tommy, the Lakers have made a statement in this ballgame.
They are matching physical for physical.
Eventually drawing even with the Celtics, as Boston incurred their first home loss of the playoffs. A wake-up call for a team that had previously carried an aura of inevitability. And after a Game 3 blowout loss, there were cracks of a disorganized, unsynchronized team seeping through Boston, as Bird himself looked for answers. The box score shows his 17 makes from 42 shots in the 2 losses, but the missed shots were more important than any he made. They were Larry Bird shots, 15 feet wide open, shots he'd need to make for any chance of winning. And when they found themselves down by 7 in the 4th, it felt like the series on the line, as Bird masterfully took over, exemplifying his all-round versatility, making plays on the defensive end and hitting those Larry Bird shots that he'd missed in Games 2 and 3, over and over. So expectedly he got all the attention on the final possession, as he made the right play, dishing it off out of the double team for a Dennis Johnson game winner. But unfortunately for Boston, 1985 was the first year that the finals format went to 2-3-2 for home court. So instead of going back to a rocking Garden crowd for Game 5, they had to make do at the Forum in Los Angeles, in which they'd have little success doing in Game 5. It was a Lakers team so different than the one of last year. They prided themselves on physicality after the soft Game 1 loss, outworking the renowned hard-nosed Celtics team. So they entered Game 6. The Lakers stacked up against the famous Boston Jinx, who were 8-0 against them in the NBA Finals.
Today, they hope they can do something about it.
From the outset, it was the Lakers' day. The game remained at a distance, not overly dramatic to draw in the Celtic crowd, as the Lakers broke the Jinx on Boston's home turf.
Thought today we would get by this one. Maybe we took them too lightly. They just played better than we anticipated and we played poorly.
In a series that had seen Bird struggle to find his shot, it was Kevin McHale who emerged as the standout performer. But even his brilliance couldn't prevent the heart-wrenching disappointment of watching their championship hopes slip away to their rivals in a lackluster finale. Come the end of the postseason, the team had gassed out, namely Robert Parrish in particular. So notably in the summer of '85, the team signed Bill Walton to back up the all-time frontcourt trio. It culminated into a perfect mix of talent, savviness and arrogance that was represented on the court through mouth-watering ball movement and an elegant style of play, as the versatile Celtic players carved up the opposition on every given night. It was a team oh so different from last year, and Bird, who had won the last 2 MVPs, well, just had his best year, making it 3 MVPs in a row as the regular season came to a close on a 67-win Boston team who lost 1 game at home all year. So they marched into the first round as a 6'6" guard from North Carolina, poised to take the league by storm, stood in their way. Although his magical play captured the headlines, the juggernaut that were the Celtics was something even Jordan couldn't handle alone, as they swept the Bulls in 3. So similarly, a Hawks team led by a younger Dominique Wilkins was again an insufficient opponent for a firing Celtics squad. A 24-0 run in a closeout Game 5 against the Hawks flowed beautifully into a 32-point win against Milwaukee in Game 1 at the conference finals. One thing clear, no one was stopping this team in the East, sweeping the Bucks to enter their 3rd straight finals. This time though, the purple and gold didn't await, but a familiar face Houston Rockets, whom they beat 5 years ago instead, albeit with a different cast that challenged the front court of Boston with Ralph Sampson and Akeem, taught by former coach Bill Fitch. But continuing their home court prowess, they humiliated the Rockets for 2 home wins. No one on the year able to stop Bird's talents. Notably as well, Boston's underrated backcourt of Ainge and DJ complemented the main men incredibly. It was a well-oiled Celtics machine that then looked poised to take Game 3 at Houston. But Mitch Wiggins' tip-in gave the Rockets the lead late, as the Celtics misfired in 2 different chances to take the lead. They now faced their biggest challenge of the postseason yet, as with the 2-3-2 format, they needed a Game 4 win to prevent a Game 5 on the road with the series at 2-2, and the Rockets presented a large threat to turn the series on its head.
You think the Celtics ever expected a struggle like this, Tommy?
No, I don't.
So down a couple, with a few minutes left, the Rockets fed Elijah, as the Celtics followed suit with Bird.
Walton, who's been there before. Bird for 3 hits, and the Celtics lead by 3, and who else but Larry Bird.
Combined with the ever-reliable Bill Walton, the Celtics now entered Game 5, up 3-1 with 3 chances to put the Rockets away. They understandably looked flat in the final game at Houston as the Rockets came out firing after the ejection of Sampson, whilst Boston simply looked ready to go clinch at home. A squad riding a 49-1 home record on the year were too good to leave it begging on home turf.
2 seconds on the shot clock. Bird wants a 3 out of it. He gets it. They know they're just about there.
The signature turnaround 3 effectively shut down any Houston run left, as Boston certified their dynasty on Bird's 29-point triple-double. As Bird stood on the podium, covered in champagne, in that instant, his legacy became immortal, matching Magic Johnson with 3 rings and 2 Finals MVPs, a defining moment in his storied career that cemented Boston's dynasty as unchallenged. Larry, all of a sudden, was 30 years old. In the blurry years of the 80s, Bird had turned from a young brash kid from French Lick, Indiana, to wily old vet.
I can't see myself hanging around for 10 or 15 years, but right now, if I had to make the decision, I would say 4 more years.
Larry and the Celtics, thus on the mountain peak of NBA glory, now had to postpone any descent down. But things got off to a mellow start, as their second overall pick in the 1986 draft, Len Bias, projected to give greater rest to the front court, shockingly passed away from a drug overdose. And with Bill Walton and Scott Wedman out for most of the year, the Celtics were left bare outside its main core. In spite of it, the roster, same as last year, drew 59 wins through the elevation of the already all-star Kevin McHale into superstardom that helped propel the Celtics squad back to success. For a large part of the year, he was the first player on the opponent's scouting report, not Bird. But output-wise, Bird had the greatest year of his career, with 28 points on 50-40-90. But as the season went on, the age of the Celtics became more apparent. McHale suffered a hairline fracture in his foot and was never quite the same afterwards. Parrish played long stretches on a sprained ankle, and Bird's back begun to give way. So the Celtics limped into the playoffs, somewhat exhausted, banged up, and emotionally drained. And to kick off their campaign was a rematch with Air Jordan. And fueled by a need for extra rest with McHale out and Bill Walton just returning, they handled business against the familiar foe with a similar sweep. So after a week off, they faced the Bucks team that they had dominated the year before, albeit without a healthy Moncrief. But with McHale out for games 1 and 2, Bird picked up any left slack, and having gone up 2-0, talks of another sweep crept in. They then lost game 3, and with game 4 headed to overtime, the Celtics quickly eyed the possibility of an even series. But with 30 seconds left, down by 1 in the first OT, Bird hit a clutch 3 to force a second overtime, where he, exhausted after playing every minute, deferred to his teammates, who closed out the Bucks. So like last year, this was a Boston team that had made the Garden their own fortress. But a shooting collapse led by Bird, who was 2 of 11 in the second half of game 5, and who then airballed the game-tying 3. And going into game 6, a Celtics squad that had been sub 500 on the road in the regular season expectedly collapsed as the Bucks forced a game 7. But the battered Celtics rallied through championship memory. A Larry Bird game for the ages. Battered, bruised, he played 48 minutes, and down the stretch he isolated in the post. Milwaukee had no choice but to foul him or let him shoot and make it, as he hit 6 consecutive free throws down the stretch to win them the game off his 31 points. And when asked about his exhaustion after the grueling series, Bird simply shrugged, saying he was ready for a doubleheader. They had survived this series, but against Detroit, Walton and Ainge were both out, and Kevin and Parrish weren't getting any healthier. Nobody knew how long this team could hold on, and in a nightmare matchup, the bad boy Pistons had come to town, a tenacious team sensing blood in the water of the champs. But their play proved punchless in games 1 and 2. But back home, the Pistons understood the edge they must carry to win the series. Before a random game against the Celtics in 1986, Isaiah Thomas reaffirmed that they couldn't beat Boston in talent, needing luck, and asked what luck meant, he jeered, saying one of their players getting injured. So as Lambeer tackled Bird in game 3, with intentions of nothing short of injury, he set the tone of the series, one that was both tenacious and tough. And as Detroit settled into their comfort zone, Boston weren't ready, getting blown out in the follow-up game 4. But the Celtics had a message for Lambeer and the Pistons of their own at the Garden.
Parrish, he can't get it to fall, and Parrish takes Lambeer to the ground with a right forearm.
Mind you, an act he wasn't even ejected for, but was later suspended in game 6. Meanwhile, in game 5, the game remained tight until the end. And when Bird fumbled the game-winning layup, the daunting proposition of a 3-2 deficit going to Detroit quickly became a reality. But Bird, in heroic play, had his final say in the game.
Thomas wants to get it in quickly. Does to Lambeer. Stolen by Bird on the cut to DJ. Yes! Yes, and a foul!
With Parrish suspended and a trip back to the Silverdome awaiting, Bird had saved the series with 1 steal. As in Game 6 without their big man, it was a formality for Detroit, setting up a second consecutive Game 7 at the Garden.
A Game 7 in Boston Garden means a Celtic victory. They have lost us 2 games in the last 85 in this building.
And as the Garden rose to close to 90 degrees, it became the ultimate pressure cooker for Game 7. A game that, as imagined, was back and forth, particularly in the fourth when both teams couldn't buy a stop. But as Bird knocked down a mid-range J and tough lefty bank shot, the Celtics grabbed 5 offensive rebounds the next time down the floor in a sequence that ultimately culminated in a series-ending Danny Ainge three-pointer.
If the Pistons don't come back and win, that will be the key possession of this game.
And they in fact didn't come back to win. Bird had the finest 3-game stretch of his career, averaging 36, 10 and 7. And as the Pistons wind their way out of the playoffs, Isaiah saying Bird would be another player in this league if he was black, not white. It was the Celtics, despite the noise, bruised and battered, led by their heart and soul Larry Bird, were heading to the NBA Finals once again, where their ultimate foe, the LA Lakers, awaited for another showdown. But whilst Bird had battled through the all-time tough East, Magic had little difficulty, beating only one 40-win team and enjoying 13 days rest before Game 1 of the Finals to Boston's 3. Coupled with it, Bird had to deal with repercussions of Isaiah Thomas's comment with an exclusive press conference as soon as he touched down in LA, as well as the circus around McHale's injury when team doctor said he didn't think he should be playing. At this point, it wasn't easy for Bird to concentrate on the task ahead of him on the court. So with the Celtics already as large underdogs and LA anxious to end their long layoff, dismantled Boston in essentially 2 blowouts to take a commanding 2-0 lead. But the Garden was a perfect revival for a dire Celtics squad in Game 3.
And the Celtics are back in it.
Flowing on into Game 4, up 16 in the third. But as the Laker Express finally got going, they reined it into a 3-point game in the fourth, as the Celtics then unraveled. Bird in particular struggling from the field, as LA eventually took the lead. But instilled with confidence, Bird took it right back.
Bird goes for 3.
The Garden erupted, their saviour present once more. But after fouling Kareem, they failed to get the loose rebound, giving the Lakers a final chance to take the lead. Bird would get a good look to respond, but it clanked off rim. Their bid to make it a series quickly vanished, as irrespective of how Game 5 ended, the Lakers would have 2 chances to end the series in Los Angeles. So expectedly the Celtics were able to respond in Game 5, but the Lakers were only thinking about going back home. So a third quarter surge from LA sealed Boston's fate in Game 6. The team survived death, injuries, its worst road record in years, along with a weak bench to reach the championship round, but fell short on their biggest stage to their biggest rival. Become the off-season, Bird made an effort to cut down to 213 pounds. He was now lighter, quicker, and could jump higher than ever. So the 31-year-old proceeded to have the greatest scoring season of his career, with 30 points on career best efficiency. His confidence now so palpitating that he'd defend his back-to-back 3-point titles with his warm-ups on, having asked the locker room who's going to finish second. But glaringly, the Celtics hadn't fixed their depth issues, as the burden fell on the aging starting 5 again, as their stranglehold on the East would again be put to the test. But one thing was certain, the road to the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference still ran through the Garden. This sentiment was ratified against an inexperienced Knicks squad out there to kickstart their fun in the East, as the Celtics comfortably took the best of 5 in 4 games. But on the other end of the spectrum, the Atlanta Hawks, a team that had bid their time in the East, thought it was finally their chance to overhaul the juggernauts of the conference. But it was a Hawks squad that was 0-11 at the Garden since '85. They quickly understood the difficulties of their task as Bird reined in a 24-point first quarter in Game 1, single-handedly outscoring the Hawks, as the Celtics stretched Atlanta's losing streak to 13 straight in an arena where dreams often crumble. But Boston still had to make the trip to Atlanta, where the road woes continued as the Hawks evened it back up. But as the series returned to the Garden, the Hawks piled on 43 points in the final term as the Celtics uncharacteristically forced their shot and even panicked in the biggest game of their season, as Atlanta stunned the Celtics to snap the losing streak at the Garden. Friday night's Game 6 in Atlanta now had the attention of the NBA world. The transformative Bird-led Celtics era seemed dangerously close to its end, touch sooner than fans wanted to see it disappear. But not if the proud veterans had something to say about it, as Bird and McHale combined for 49 points and 21 rebounds, reimbursing themselves for a bitter Game 5 loss. And as Game 7 awaited, Bird reassured the world that the Hawks had their chance at home to send the dynasty packing and should now forget it, going back to the Garden. Yet having said that, the Hawks' Wilkins had 31 points going into the fourth, compared to Bird's measly 14. But irrespective, the game was in the balance, and on that famous floor, Bird took over the dance. It was a man possessed. Him and Wilkins went shot for shot.
This is a type of game of who's going to blink first.
Wilkins responds.
Anchoring their teams to victory.
Between the two of them.
It's Bird's turn. And the Celtics have the lead.
It's a duel. Put down your saber.
Both players seemed to exist in their own world, floating in a flow state with 8 others on the court, but the spotlight was theirs alone. So as the quarter ticked on, Bird favourably found himself up 3 with 30 seconds left.
It's it into Bird, and Wilkins is there. Bird comes free. Bird for the layup. You are watching what greatness is all about.
Indescribable. Wreathed in the green and white, Bird at his immaculate maturity elegantly danced for a 20-point fourth quarter in one of the great games of all time, winning like he always did on the parquet floor in a Game 7. But as the Celtics advanced, they faced a Pistons team built differently from the year before, both deeper and more defensively elite, tailored specifically to handle the battle-worn starting 5-focused Boston squad. So when Detroit burnt a 21-game losing streak at the Garden in Game 1, 2 things became clear. The Detroit team was far superior to last year's version, and the Celtics were showing the toll of a grueling history of postseason success. Where in Game 2, it took 2 overtimes and McHale's miraculous second career 3 to get one back at the Garden. But when Bird scored 20 points or less for the 3rd game running, the whole world wondered only a week after Game 7 against Atlanta what had happened. Voodoo magic? Hubcaps as rims? Bird himself seemingly unsure of his slump. But in his favour, a low-scoring grudge match Game 4 went in their way, as the series fell even, as Boston now had home court back, but having lost terribly in both losses and narrowly escaped in both wins, eventually their luck ran out, losing the next 2 games to end their run of 4 straight NBA final appearances. In what was Bird's worst series of his career, he was shooting way off at merely 35%, sending a bitter farewell for coach KC Jones, who would retire at the end of the year. The inevitability of the Boston Celtics was now fading. And as the Lakers got stronger, the Celtics got older, and the Pistons got deeper, the future looked bleak in Boston, and a poor start to the season was put on watch as Bird had tendonitis in his foot and bone spurs in both ankles. Initially, the Celtics hoped treatment would be a short-term fix, but after x-rays it confirmed a need for surgery that would sideline him 3 months that would eventually spiral into a season-ending injury. It wasn't a bad boy's hard foul that finally sidelined Larry, but the slow deterioration of both Achilles, worn down from relentless overuse and his refusal to give in to pain and take a seat. And as the league wondered how important Bird was, the Celtics limped to the postseason barely over 500 as the 8th seed, all to get swept by the Pistons. So as Bird worked tirelessly to get back to health for the 1989-90 season, he quickly answered critics with a 32-point performance in Game 1 of the season. However, as he continued to find his rhythm and the team struggled with offensive synergy, he began forcing bad shots, as the media began to unfairly question his character. The once untouchable superstar that did everything for his team now stood in year 11 labelled as selfish and disruptive. Anonymously, John Paxson, his teammate at the time, feeling he was tearing the team apart. So Bird, as he'd done his whole career, followed it up with a 40-point game, leading Boston to win 6 of their next 7 after the anonymous tip-in. With the repaired but 34-year-old Bird, Boston improved by 10 wins and a 4 seed on the year to set up a matchup against the Knicks. And after Bird piled on a 24-point triple-double in Game 1, followed by a 29-point massacre of the Knicks in Game 2, the echoes of a potential sweep began to resonate. That in a season of drama, all was going right at the best possible time. but fan enthusiasm waned as the Celtics blew the next 2 games in New York, a repeated pattern of the last few years blowing any leads on the road. So now Game 5 was set up on a Sunday afternoon in the Boston Garden. Everyone expecting the Celtics to win the series, clinching in their usual dramatic fashion. But no more could the Celtics pull out the home heroics. The stars weren't aligned this time, and as Ewing threw up a prayer in the final minutes,
Really threw it away. 1 second. Ewing hits the corner. And you gotta know something when that happens. That's an omen.
it signaled a stunning Boston exit on their home floor. The old faithful had run out of steam, and the once sure thing failed to deliver, Bird missing his final 5 shots with the season on the line. For the first time in what felt like a decade, Larry couldn't get the Celtics over the line on his own, in only his second deciding game loss of his career. But at last the team got younger in the 1990-91 season. As roster and head coach changes frontlined a busy offseason for Boston, and as the team found themselves 27-5, they looked to be back in the championship hunt. The best record in the NBA and on pace for 62 wins until their storied franchise forward was sidelined from a random game against New York. Inconspicuous at the time, but would lead to a 1-month absence, and upon his return he averaged merely 20 points on 43% shooting through the end of the year, in what felt like a career-ending injury for the Bird we knew. The 1991 NBA playoffs would begin as Bird was visibly in discomfort, having missed 7 of Boston's last 8 and all 4 days of practice leading into Game 1 of the playoffs. But the inspiring figure, whilst donning the Celtic jersey, did everything for them in Game 1, one of the gutsiest 21-point triple-double wins you'll ever see, that ended with Bird in hospital before coming out ready to suit up for Game 2. Boston lost that game at home and split the next 2 games in Indiana to take it to a Game 5. The media circled Bird in what fans hypothesized to be his last ever game, laid out like a piece of cardboard whenever he wasn't required to make a play. But symbolic of his character, a loose ball left him again lying on the ground in pain, but this time he had broken a cheekbone on the parquet floor with a concussion.
And Larry Bird is headed directly to the locker room for treatment.
And as the arena awaited in anticipation for an update, there was never a doubt on what was about to happen.
And here comes Larry Bird.
The Larry that came out was the one from 81, 84, 86, the one whose omnipresence captified everything in the game of basketball. Immediately he started every Celtic fast break, and his jumper soon gave the Celtics a non-refundable lead. Every rebound, every pass, every shot, and his 32-point game so impactful to KO the pesky Pacers. And if it was the fairy tale ending on a storied career, oh how great was it. Of course, it got no easier against the Pistons, where Larry's pain only increased, and his play only diminished, as the Celtics could go no further, falling in 6 games to the back-to-back reigning champs in a valiant fight. With an off-season to get back healthy, Bird opted in for a final year. Parrish 38, McHale 34, and Bird 35, the all-time trio very much on their last legs of the season. So expectedly, it was the inevitable replacement of Reggie Lewis as leading scorer, as chants of Larry were echoed out by those of Reggie, although fans obviously held Bird's character closest to their hearts in spite of it, and whose game still held strong, making a 12th All-Star Game appearance as he sported a 20-pound back brace in every game. His legend grew ever greater with each game that passed by, leaving fans with a vintage 49-point performance amidst it all in March. So the team still got to 50 wins, and as they learned to play without Larry in another injury-riddled season, they got past the Pacers in the first round without him. But upon his return in the second round, against a strong Cleveland side, they could do little. On his retirement, there was silence. The big 3 all avoided the question, but Bird knew. So on the 18th of August, 1992, Larry Bird announced his retirement from basketball.
Maybe a year or 2 more, but there's just no way possible I was going to be able to do that.
A legacy that, despite the diminishing stats upon his later years, only grew as time went on. His run with Indiana State, transcendent years in the mid-80s, that rivalry with Magic Johnson, and that sweet return with a concussion, flailing back, and broken cheekbone to win one last series, all serve to symbolize the the heart of Larry Bird.